next story is going to be an interesting one, and it actually was also a request. It was a request from a YouTube user named Neezy-Orc. I'm sure that means something to somebody. Neezy-Orc. It's your D&D character. The year is 1994. The date, September 14th. There is a stellar event. People are up at night, and they see what is described as a pyrotechnic display of some magnificence. The sky was clear, and just all these meteorites starts coming down. Now, there was a report of, in this meteor shower, you saw a fireball-like object flanked by two smaller fireballs. Now, technically, those are just called meteors, but for whatever reason, they stood out more. I actually have a conspiracy theory, and it's funny because I thought about doing this as an actual episode, but I don't know if there's any meat to it, so I'll just spit it out here, and I'll see what I can pull up. What if the War of the Worlds broadcast, the famous Orson Welles broadcast that people thought was a real alien landing, what if that was real, it really happened, and the media is just covering it up by saying, oh, it was just a big event? What if people were actually fighting aliens in the Pine Barrens of New York, or wherever the radio broadcast took place? I guess I should learn where that took place before I make a conspiracy theory up, but... And then afterwards, they're like, yeah, we fought those aliens last night. And they're like, no, you didn't. It never happened. What if that was the first Men in Black event? The first time that it was actually a radio broadcast saying, watch out, there's aliens coming. And then the Orson Welles version was recorded after the fact to cover up the real radio broadcast. And the original radio broadcast was scrubbed. And that's why people were like, oh, there was this mass panic. And other people were like, no, there wasn't. There was no mass panic that actually took place during then. No one was listening to the show. There was another show going on. Okay, but anyways, you have this fireball display, meteor display, on September 14th. And then shortly after that, a mother and her child were driving down the road. Now, the article doesn't specifically say which one is driving the car. However, I will assume it was the child, of course. They're driving on the road, and they see a UFO go by, and they're like, a trucker, maybe the same trucker from the missing skier story. He's everywhere. He's driving through the back roads of Africa, and he sees what he describes as weird beings by the side of the road while he's driving at night. So you're starting to get these little sightings being reported in the area. But both of those kind of pale in comparison to what happens next. On September 16th, in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, there was a school known as Ariel School. It was not aerial like planes, but Ariel as in the Little Mermaid is how it's spelled. It was a very expensive private school in the area, and it had a bunch of different nationalities there. You had rich people, like local rich people who had their kids there. You had diplomats who had their kids there, things like that. It's an expensive school. These kids are out in the playground. Yay, wee! Kicking the ball on swings and tetherball. Not at the same time, because that would be quite dangerous, but that would actually be a cool sport. They're all having fun, and they look up. Now, I think it's very telling that there are no adults watching them outside in the playground, as far as what's happening now. So you just have 62 kids out in the playground. But anyways, the spaceship lands right by their playground, kind of behind some bushes. And the kids are just completely shocked. And the UFO opens. Steam menacingly pours out, and two silhouettes begin to descend the staircase. I don't know if there was a staircase or steam or anything like that, but the point is that two aliens get out of the UFO. Now, it's weird because the kids all had different reactions to what they're seeing, and a lot of it has to do with their nationalities. So these two aliens get out, and what is noticed is that they have kind of long faces, but they look fairly human. They're wearing black, shiny suits, so like head to toe, like neck to feet, or neck to hands, or whatever, tendrils, no. They have black suits that cover pretty much their whole body but their face, and they have long black hair. Long black hair. Almost a little slicked back. Very mod aliens. And so this is a quote from the article where there is a researcher named Hind, that's not his full name, but I didn't write down the first name, There's a researcher named Hind who is talking to these kids not during the event, but shortly after the event and nowadays, because this happened back, in like 94. So here's the quote. Although they all came from wealthy families, Hind believed their cultural differences gave rise to differing interpretations of the event, and that the differences in interpretation made the details that were common to all accounts very compelling indeed. One of the white students, for example, thought at first that the little man in black might have been Mrs. Stevens' gardener, but then saw that the figure had long, straight black hair, not really like a black person's hair, so he realized he made a mistake. Now, first off, racist. Beyonce doesn't have an afro. Secondly, it is interesting. I had a friend who grew up in South Africa. His dad was a diplomat, or he was an attaché to a diplomat. And he was white, but he grew up in South Africa. He's from America, born in America, went to South Africa as a little kid. He said that at the time apartheid was going on, and when every black person who was a worker had to wear a jumpsuit that signified their job. So I don't remember the exact colors, but you could say a gardener wore an orange jumpsuit, and an electrician would wear a green jumpsuit, and so on and so forth. Now, that wasn't the case across the country as far as I know, but in certain areas, that's how it was. And he said even as a little kid, he knew there was something wrong about that. It seemed very systematic. It's not the same thing as wearing a uniform to your job. It was almost like a mark. Like a uniform is something you can be proud of, but he just said it was weird. It gave him a weird feeling. Even as a little kid, he thought it wasn't like they were wearing a uniform. It was almost like they were wearing some sort of like designation. It was bizarre. And I might not be saying it correctly, because I know like army people wear uniforms and stuff like that, but he said it almost made them look like they were lower people. Because you would just see like a bunch of orange suited people, a bunch of green suited people. I don't know. I might not be describing it correctly, but yeah, it was a weird experience for him. So I think that's why she probably thought it was the gardener, because he was wearing some sort of jumpsuit. But then she's like, oh, he has straight hair, and black people don't have straight hair. Racist. Some of the black children thought that the short little beings were Vikwambo, or Tokoloshas, the evil goblins of Shona and Nedebleke folklore, and burst into tears, fearing they would be eaten. So the kids who grew up in that area, whose family was from that area, they had heard these stories of these goblins that had like all black. I don't know if they were wearing black suits and long hair, but it was something about them that made them think it was a mystical thing. The white kid goes, oh, that must just be the gardener. No, that's not the gardener. And then the young black kids who were there were like, oh no, it's the goblins. And I think that is fairly common. If a guy in Ireland sees some sort of paranormal event, he may go, it's the Fays coming. And then a guy in New York may see a paranormal event and be like, oh, it's a UFO. So, I mean, it's just based on that experience. And then this is one of the best quotes we have determining the description. This is the last quote I'll read here. This is from a witness. I could see the little man, about a meter tall, was dressed in a black shiny suit, that he had long black hair, and his eyes, which seemed lower on the cheek than our eyes, were large and elongated. The mouth was just a slit, and the ears were hardly discernible. So you had 62 kids see these things, and they'll still talk about it today. There's actually a big documentary that's being made right now. And I don't know if Dan Aykroyd is producing it, but he's definitely in all the promo videos for it, and they're talking to these kids now as adults. But while this was going on, there was a teachers' meeting in the school. And I was watching the promo for the documentary. One of the teachers said it was really weird because they're sitting in the meeting, and she goes, it was like on cue. She goes, we could not have practiced this to be as on point as it happened. She goes, we're sitting there in the room, and she goes, on cue, 62 kids scream and begin running into the school. Like they all had the same reaction at the same time. They run into the school, they're totally freaking out. They go to their teachers, there's aliens out there. At this point, some of the teachers do look out the window and see something out there, but they can't be for sure what they're looking at. The teachers tell the kids, settle down, it's just your imagination, you didn't really see a UFO. None of the adults got a clear look at it. Everyone just go back to class, it's totally fine. They're basically the Men in Black, but teachers. But the kids, obviously, when they go home, they're still freaked out. They're having nightmares. They tell their parents, we saw aliens today. At that point, the parents the next day are calling the school to find out what the hell happened to my kid at school. And the answer from the school is, we don't know. The kids are talking about aliens and UFOs and stuff like that, but we didn't see anything. A couple of the teachers said they thought they saw something in the bushes, and the parents are like, there's someone in the bushes? And you didn't tell me? Oh, no, calm down. Nothing happened. Think it was a gardener. Oh, okay. So that story is still being investigated today, because now the adults have a better command of the language, and they can better describe what they saw as opposed to a bunch of school children. And even today, the adults are like, oh, no, I know what I saw, man. There's some aliens. Like, that was a straight UFO that landed. And what's interesting is that is not the only... That was the request from New York, but that's not the actual only time that a UFO has been sighted or landed at a school. So, in 1977, a UFO landed in Broadhaven in Wales, and it was also at a school. It was seen by 14 kids. It lands. Aliens get out of the vehicle. Weird. In 1966, there was a UFO sighting in Melbourne, and this one did involve a teacher. There was 300 children and some staff saw a UFO flying around the school. One of the kids goes in and tells the science teacher, Teacher, there's a UFO outside. And the science teacher's like, damn it. No, there's not. UFOs aren't real. I'm a science teacher. I don't believe in any of the nonsense. And the kid was like, no, you got to come right now. Science teacher finally goes, fine, I'll go check it out, because he's quoted in this article. He walks out of the classroom, sees a UFO flying there. The science teacher goes on to explain that 5 jets came to intercept the object over their school, and the object kept staying ahead of the jets, but in the general vicinity of the school. And the jets couldn't get close enough to it, and then it just took off, disappeared, and the jets flew away, apparently. But basically, the airplanes could never get close to this UFO. So, is there a rational explanation for this? Now, obviously with UFOs, it just comes down to somebody seeing something and maybe being mistaken about it, or it actually being a UFO. Like, well, it's a UFO either way, but you know what I mean? Like, actually an object of unknown origin. I guess that's the same thing as UFO. You get what I mean? Alien spacecraft. So, is there a rational explanation for this? Obviously, kids are going to be fooled easier than adults. But a mass group of children, like, I can understand if 3 or 4 of them were seeing this UFO and they went and reported it and being completely dismissed. But we're talking about dozens of kids in some of these instances. And these are the only 3 that I found in the amount of time I was researching it. I'm wondering if there's a lot more stories of UFOs landing at schools or being sighted by schools. Now, obviously, as I'm reading this, 2 things pop in my head. One, I think, not that it's fake. I think that the kids probably saw something they didn't understand. First thing that popped in my head was I thought, it's some sort of military drill. It's some sort of vehicle that the military is using, and for whatever reason. But I was like, yeah, but I don't know. The second thing I thought, though, is there's one thing that I would say 90% of schools have in common, other than kids and teachers. They tend to have very large play areas. Now, I know all of them don't, but when we're talking about Africa and Wales and Australia, maybe not Wales, but Africa and Australia are very well known for their massive amounts of land. So their playgrounds probably are quite bigger than, say, a tiny elementary school. But it's a perfect place. What I'm getting at is it's a perfect place to land an air vehicle, is at a school. Because most playgrounds are quite spacious. If it was an alien spacecraft, and there's always that idea that to aliens, we would be the way ants are to us. They don't really think of us as a sentient species. They're so much more advanced because ants are very intelligent, but we still crush them. We still spray them with poison. And we especially, if we are moving into a house and they go, hey, just to let you know there's some ants here, you're not going to be like, deal's off. You're going to be like, okay, I really don't care, get rid of them or whatever. And then you just move into the house. Or if you're driving your car and you see a little anthill on the road, you're not going to slam on your brakes and be like, no way, I'm not crushing those ants. Huge pile up behind you. You're like, keep it real, ants, keep it real. You just run over them. If that theory is true that we're so far behind aliens, both mentally and technologically, that we're nothing to them, they could just be seeing a large expanse of land to land at, and they really don't care who sees them or what type of impact they have. Because you don't care if an ant sees you when you walk by. You have no problem strolling by a bunch of ants. Unless they're fire ants and you don't have shoes on. But you don't care. It never even occurs to you that an ant or a spider or a billy goat may see you walking by because they don't affect you. Is that why these aliens are just like, there's a big space here, let's just land here, let's do some repairs. A bunch of kids are seeing them, freaking out, aliens are looking over, and they're like, what the? Don't worry about them, dude, they're just ants, Here, give me the space spanner. Beep, beep, beep. They're working on their stuff. It's an interesting theory. I think if the theory was true, you would see UFOs landing in sports stadiums. But it could also be that you had a wide area that was flattened, because playgrounds they could have landed in the bush of Africa, but there's stuff everywhere. You land on top of an elephant, you land on top of a Groot sling, you're going to get your shit blown up. Playgrounds are very well manicured, they're flat. To any other species, it would look like it was a landing pad. It would look like it was perfectly stable to drop your ship in the middle of, do a couple of repairs, take a couple pictures, and take off. Are there more? And it's funny because the reaction to both the science teacher and the original school staff makes you wonder, are there more sightings of UFOs landing at schools? And they're just being covered up or disbelieved? Is it possible that there are many more stories that are a close encounter of the third grade kind?